Hello aspirants, welcome back on the lecture series of disaster management. In today's lecture, we are going to look at the different types of disasters. What are disasters, what are hazards we have done in the previous lecture. So please go and check the previous videos that are available on the YouTube channel. So here in this video, we are going to just look at natural disasters. For your convenience, what I'm going to do is that each natural disaster, I'm going to divide it in separate videos so it can be easy for you all to access and understand. So as we have learned in the previous classes that there are two types of disasters, that is natural disaster and human disasters. In natural disasters mainly we are going to deal with biological disasters, your geophysical, hydrological, meteorological and climatological disasters. These are the type of disasters. Please remember that when I'm talking about disasters, for example, if I'm talking about earthquake, I'm not going to go into the geographical aspects here. I'm not going to say teach as to how it happens, why it happens, okay, that you will be reading in your geography section. But I'm going to just do it through the perspective of disaster management. That is, I'm going to check the vulnerability of earthquake, okay, how vulnerable our population is, what is the impact of the earthquake, what are the initiatives taken by the government to prevent earthquake, post disaster, pre disaster, what are the steps taken, then what are the challenges in managing disasters, okay, that we are going to look at, and also way forward, what more can the government do here. Okay, these are the things that I'm going to cover. Firstly, we look at the definition of natural disasters. Natural disasters are environmental events. Okay, please remember, very very important word here, environmental events that threaten a community's safety and functionality. Okay, so what are natural disasters? They are environmental events. There are so many environmental events that happen. Okay, but not every environmental event is a disaster here. I've explained what is the difference between a hazard and a disaster. Please look at in the previous video. So here, what do you classify as a natural disaster? Natural disaster is an environmental event that threatens a community's safety and functionality. Okay, so as I've told in previous section, natural disasters can be divided into three forms based on their occurrence. Okay, based on their occurrence, based on where they occur, they can be divided into three types, that is on land, based on water, based on air, and based on water. Fine. One more thing that I wanted to tell you is that every disaster is interlinked. Okay, they are interlinked. What do I mean by interlinked here? See, if I say that earthquake is happening, okay, if in a place earthquake is happening, then what can be the impact? The impact is that if that earthquake is happening below the sea surface, then it may give rise to tsunami. If an earthquake is happening somewhere in a hilly area, then it may give rise to landslide. Fine. So here every disaster is interlinked between them. Fine. So please remember that point, very very important here. Natural disasters has the potential to do substantial damage to both public and private property. Okay, it has the potential to damage both public as well as private property. Fine. Okay, so now once we are done with the definition of natural disasters, we look at our first disaster, that is earthquake. Okay, we look at the first disaster, that is earthquake. So you all know what an earthquake is. Okay, you will be reading it in your geography section. I'll not be explaining. We'll be looking it through the perspective of disaster management, as I've told. So once again, I'll make it clear that this lectures will be through the perspective of disaster management, and I'm not going to teach you how and where and why earthquakes happen and all. Fine. So now let's dive into it. Firstly, when we look at the vulnerability of earthquake, why is India vulnerable? You all know what happened 60 million years ago. Fine, 60 million years ago, the Indian plate moved towards the Eurasian plate, and it is still moving gradually. Okay, so because of these plate movements, we have the earthquake zone that is regularly active in the north as well as the northeastern part of India. Okay. One more important aspect when we look at vulnerability is how much of Indian land mass is under the seismic zone here, that is under your earthquake prone zone. See, 59% of Indian land mass is considered as earthquake prone. Under it, 11% of it falls under very high risk zone, that is zone 5. Okay, this map you have to remember, and it is very very helpful. Then 18% is high risk zone 4, 30% is moderate risk zone. So as you observe, as I've shown, that most of the earthquake risk zone is in the north as well as the northeast of India. Okay, so this is the vulnerability part. Then what are the impacts? When we read what are the impacts of earthquake, there can be social and psychological. Social and psychological in what way? That is, there may be permanent displacement. Earthquake happen, it may destroy buildings, okay, residential buildings, and by this what may happen, it may lead to permanent displacement, okay. It may also lead to deaths, okay, which may affect the psychology as well as the social aspects of a society. Then economically, you all know what may happen, okay, like we have seen recently in the Turkey Syria border, how earthquake has caused huge economic loss, okay. It is said that the loss cost are in billion of dollars, fine. And environmental, as I've said, all the disasters are interlinked. So if earthquake happens in some of the ecological sensitive areas, like it may happen in hilly areas, okay, so landslide may happen. Landslide is very bad, it may destroy the soil composition, fine. So these are the environmental impacts that an earthquake can cause, okay. Then what are the what are the what are the initiatives taken by the government here? Okay, what are the initiatives taken by the government? The initiatives taken by the government are not only post disasters, but some of the initiatives taken by the government are pre disasters as well. Like the Geological Survey of India has released something called as earthquake risk assessment and mapping zones, fine. So it has released a map which is assessing which part of India are under high risk zone, which part of India are more vulnerable to the impacts of earthquake. Okay, this is done by who? This is done by the Geological Survey of India. Similarly, the NDMA, that is your National Disaster Management, has come up uh, with 6 important earthquake management pillars. Okay, 6 pillars of earthquake management. As you can see here, it is not only pre earthquake, it is also post earthquake. Like for pre earthquake management, they have said earthquake resistant constructions, okay, awareness and preparedness, regulation and enforcement. These are all pre earthquake preparedness. What about post earthquake preparedness? They are given emergency response, okay. Good and effective emergency response should be maintained by every state is what NDMA has given under its guidelines. Then IIT Roorkee has developed something called as early earthquake system under the name Bhukamp Alert. Okay, Bhukamp Alert. So this is for Uttarakhand, and also for pan India we have something called as India Quick. Okay, this India Quick is being developed by who? It is developed by National Center for Seismology, okay, which functions under the Ministry of Science. So these are some of the initiatives that have been taken by the government as well as some of the other universities and organizations to prepare India against earthquake impacts. Okay, then what are the challenges? See, the management of earthquake has a lot of challenges. We look at one by one. So firstly, there are incomprehensive policies. That is, the policies that have been framed by the government, they are not comprehensible. They are not addressing all the aspects of the earthquake preparedness. Okay, they are not helping us. They are not preparing for post disasters. Okay, which organization should be given, which organization should be the head when it comes to emergency responses. Okay, so all these are some of the incomprehensive policies that have been formed. Secondly, hilly and mountainous areas, these are the areas which are very much prone to earthquakes. Here retrofitting is difficult and costly in these regions. Okay, given the topography of this region and given the cost, it is very difficult to have retrofitting is that the buildings, okay, the buildings that are there already, they have to be earthquake ready. Okay, that is what retrofitting means. Then lack of skilled human force. We don't see large human resources that has been devoted in developing earthquake resistant buildings. Okay, we don't have huge population or huge studies being done to have buildings which are earthquake resistant. Then lack of formal competency based on licensing of structural engineering and masons. Then restricted earthquake engineering. Okay, this is another aspect. Preparedness education, we have lack of education and awareness regarding to earthquake preparedness. then inadequate monitoring and enforcement of earthquake resistant building codes. Okay, so this comes under states, but states are ill equipped, that is the states are inadequate in monitoring and enforcing earthquake resistant building codes is what they are saying. Then faulty construction already covered. Paucity of funds, okay, so for everything in India there is paucity of funds. Then disaster response regime not swift, as I've told here, due to incomprehensive policies. Okay, due to incomprehensive policies, what has happened is the disaster response has not been swift due to the coordination. Okay, the coordination is not right between different organization when it comes to emergency response. Because of this, the emergency response, the disaster response has not been swift. Then lack of awareness and training of the local population. Again, the people who are living in the hilly areas and the areas which are prone to earthquakes, which are vulnerable to earthquakes, these population are not given right education as to how they should be prepared when earthquake strikes, what steps they should take, how they should maintain their safety. Okay, all these are some of the aspects, some of the challenges that are involved when we talk about the earthquake management system in India. So way forward, what can the government do here? Firstly, strict enforcements of building codes and standards. These are very very important, because what happens is the first and the main impact of earthquakes are on the residential buildings. Okay, so if building codes and standards are strictly enforced, what will happen is the disaster is mitigated and minimized. Okay, then retrofitting and reinforcement. Already buildings that have been built in these hilly areas, they have to be retrofitted and reinforcement has to be done, that so that they can withstand the impact of earthquake here. Then emergency response planning. Okay, regular regular and effective emergency planning is very very important. Okay, people have to be made aware as to how emergency response is being done and what is their role, what is the role of their in and during the disaster here. Then research and monitoring. Okay, so we have different studies being taken by different universities as to how earthquake can be managed. These studies, what they have been done, this has to be implemented at pan India level, and whatever research has been done, the research has to be used in making the emergency response plans. Then land use planning again. Okay, so we all know earthquakes cannot be predicted, it cannot be predicted here, but what can be done is that the land that is being used, it has to be effectively planned. Okay, it has to be effectively planned so that the earthquake prone areas where the earthquake can happen regularly, there the population which is residing can be lessened. Okay, so these are some of the ways through which planning can be done.